5 practical steps for successful persistent VDI implementation presented by Toby Coleridge, Global Solutions Architect at Atlantis Computing. We will examine the common challenges storage presents when implementing a virtual desktop infrastructure and 5 steps to overcome these challenges. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This session is being recorded and will be made available after the completion of the webinar. We will be allocating time at the end for Q&A. Please utilize the question function in the GoToWebinar console to ask questions in real time. I'd like to hand over the presentation to Toby Coleridge.
Thanks, Kim. So yeah, today we're going to look at some of the practical steps that we can put together to allow successful VDI implementation. And whilst we'll focus around persistent VDI, a lot of these are also applicable to any sort of VDI deployment today. So just a bit of background around Atlantis as a company. It's a software company focused on virtual data center optimization. Been around for the last 4 or 5 years, focusing very much on VDI, but now opening up into general virtual data center optimization. To give you an idea of some of our customers, we've got about 400 globally, and that represents about 450,000 licenses. We have partnerships with a lot of the major VDI vendors that you recognize, Citrix, VMware, and then all the supporting infrastructure and services companies, IBM, BCE, NetApp, HP, and Dell. And when we go and look at the range of customers that we've got, it's fairly broad, from healthcare, medical, service providers, federal government, through to someone like JP Chase, who's actually one of our biggest customers out there today. So a very brief background on us. So if we break down what we're going to look at today, really there's 5 areas that we're going to split this up into. So developing the business case. What do we really need to do today to make VDI successful from a business standpoint, from a numbers standpoint? Looking at user requirements, and also look at how they've changed over the last couple of years and how they've become more demanding, I suppose. Understand the infrastructure, and looking at storage requirements up front and where storage is critical, and I suppose why it's so critical today to be able to deliver successful VDI projects. And then also looking at how we can put some consideration into the future and architect today with that future plan in mind. So it's not just about delivering a VDI project today, it's about understanding where you want to get to in 2 or 3 years' time, architecting that vision, and then delivering that in bite-sized chunks. So why do we need to do something different with the business case? And really it boils down to the fact that shared storage was never really designed for virtual desktop use. A lot of the capability put into shared storage platforms was designed around read-heavy workloads, server workloads that were pulling I/O all the time, but in a very consistent pattern. As soon as we start to look at virtual users and running on virtual desktops, then they're very transient, they're very unpredictable in their behavior. But giving them a consistent, high-performing user experience is essential if we want to make a virtual desktop deployment successful. A lot of time we'll start to see words like latency and IOPS and throughput come into it, and it's some of the core storage concepts that we need to look at and optimize for VDI to really give them that performance. We're seeing a broad range of applications competing for performance across what is becoming a smaller and smaller available resource in terms of storage. So enterprise billing applications, competing with VDI, competing with web servers, all coming from disparate virtualized servers coming onto one storage platform. So how do we optimize it specifically for VDI? And if we do impact that, then we start to not only impact VDI, but VDI can have a massive impact on an enterprise application. And so we can start to see other areas of business impacted, not just the end user experience or the VDI state that we've got today. So there's a lot of this understanding that we need to look at in detail and really start to do something different to be able to make the business case stack up. From a pure cost of putting VDI in through to removing that impact of VDI on the rest of the business and what that means for the rest of the business. So, Gartner came out earlier this year and said that traditional storage architectures are not the best for virtualized desktop environments. And we need to start to push a lot of the sort of boundaries that the storage architects are comfortable in at the moment, and consider alternative approaches to optimizing their storage platforms and delivering virtual desktops. So a couple of sort of background trends around this. Storage forms somewhere in the region of 60% of the CAPEX cost of any virtual desktop. So focusing on this as a core deliverable as part of your VDI project and trying to reduce the cost of that will significantly change the CAPEX and OPEX that's attributed to that desktop, especially when we start to consider that for every dollar that we spend in CAPEX, we'll actually spend 3 in operational expenditure OPEX. So anything that we can do to reduce that upfront CAPEX expenditure will certainly be seen over the 3 or 5 year lifetime of a project in reduction in operational expenditure. And we'll go through that in a little bit more detail as well. That OPEX will cover anything from data center space, power, cooling, support and maintenance. And it's often difficult to quantify, and a lot of people will look at OPEX in different ways, from one team not even paying for it, and so they don't really look at it as part of an initial understanding of the cost of VDI, through to other people doing very, very detailed analysis, understanding exactly how much power they're using and what they're attributing to each virtual desktop. So different environments will have very different understanding of that balance between CAPEX and OPEX. But fundamentally, you have to understand that as we start to reduce the amount of CAPEX we need, we have a significant cost saving, and at the end of the day, it's all cash. So net is cash saving. So this is a very brief look at a model that we put together looking at the cost of a desktop and the potential savings by putting an Atlantis IDEO solution in place. So if we look at a traditional desktop today, it would cost somewhere in the region of between $1,000 and $2,000 to equal the performance of that PC. And we're talking about some of the more modern endpoints having things like SSD, having very capable CPU and memory requirements. And when we start to match that in a large-scale VDI deployment, it becomes relatively expensive. So what IDEO is looking to do is reduce that CAPEX OPEX by up to 80%. And we're doing that by significantly taking a chunk of that storage that we need to deploy away and changing how we're deploying storage for virtual desktops. So as you can see here, we are driving up the amount of I/O or performance that we're delivering to a desktop from somewhere traditionally you see a lot of people size desktops around the 30 to 50 IOPS, and we're driving that to 100x bigger, so 5,000 IOPS a desktop. At the same time, we're reducing the cost of delivering that storage from near $1.2 million down to just under $400,000. So representing a 70% saving in CAPEX over that cost of that desktop. And as we break that down to a per desktop price, we're under $300 for the infrastructure required to deliver that virtual desktop. So we're getting to a very compelling price point where we can certainly start to deliver on that, the long-standing promise that VDI will give you cost savings. We're really starting to see that delivered today. And it's not just in a spreadsheet. We've got enough customers within those 400 that we can show you models where this has certainly been achieved, and in a lot of cases we've got far bigger cost reductions than this. So we're seeing anywhere between $150 and $300 depending on the type of desktop that you're trying to deliver. Okay, so the second point was all about understanding the user requirements. And the key to the title really here is ensuring everyone is happy. So it's not just about end user experience. So yes, they're critical to ensuring the project's successful. They have some unique requirements. More and more people are wanting to bring their own devices, have multiple types of devices. So anything from content creation, such as a laptop, through to just looking at content on a phone or very quick response to an email or something like that. Everybody wants a better than PC user experience. And that's got harder and harder to deliver. If we look at what a desktop three or 4 years ago, it still had maybe 2 or 3 gigs of RAM, a CPU, and more importantly, it had a single disk that was capable of delivering somewhere between 75 and 100 IOPS. So that was dedicated resource to that user. If we now jump forward, more and more people are starting to get things like MacBook Airs or Ultrabooks with SSDs. And so the performance that they're experiencing, not necessarily in enterprise, but certainly at home, is being impacted in the business, and the business is having to adapt to that and provide that experience. And so it's making delivering VDI more challenging. The IT organization has to be able to deliver it. So we have to look at the needs of IT. We have to be trying to simplify deployments. We have to be able to look at, can we avoid PC refresh every 3 years? How do we deliver some of their requirements around high availability and disaster recovery? So it's another aspect of the user requirements from a VDI project. And then finally, I suppose, you've got the Chief Financial Officer, bean counters, looking at, can I reduce the cost of what I'm delivering? How do I make my business more agile? How do I reduce cost out of my data centers? But I want to do that without any extra risk. So I want to reduce any risk I have to hidden costs, the unknown. And so that's why it's key to map out the business benefits around CAPEX and OPEX and show that you really understand those costs over a longer period of time to help reduce that risk from a financial point of view investing in VDI. Okay, so now that we understand that end user experience, or the user experience required, then we can really start to look at why size, capacity, and performance, specifically around storage, matters. So as we commented earlier, virtualized desktop workloads are very unpredictable. I don't know if somebody's going to log in at 7 a.m. or 10 a.m. or not even start work until 2 p.m. Or if I have a global operation, then I don't know at what point of the day they're really going to log in at all. And we start to see extended work patterns as we put in virtual desktops because of some of the benefits of working from home, then that gets even worse. But the one thing that those users will demand is a consistent level of performance. So consistency is key. If I can deliver something that's consistent, then somebody can work out and deliver it. If we look at the type of workloads that VDI typically mimics, it's going to be very write intensive. Somewhere in the region of 75 to 80% writes. It's going to be random, and the I/O is going to come in high bursts. So it's not predictable. It's not like I'm continuously reading from a database or anything like that. It's users logging in, being very active, or it's a developer suddenly compiling and demanding very high I/O. And we start to see very high peaks. So we'll talk about 30 to 40 to 50 IOPS required, but actually if I go and look at a compile going on, we'll see that we need 2,000 or 3,000 IOPS for a fraction of a second, but we still need to be able to deliver that performance. Otherwise we slow that application down, and we'll come on to that in more detail in a bit. We'll start to see very small I/O with an average block size of 4K. So what Windows NTFS is running is 4K blocks. And that's, somebody described this to me as a million pinpricks on my storage platform. So it's like death by a million pinpricks. And as we start to scale up the VDI environment to cater for more and more users, we actually see the effect of that far more on our storage platform. And that's why we'll often hear about VDI projects starting to hit challenges when we get to the 500, 600, 700 users and start to slow down, is because that storage platform that's been designed from the forefront may still have enough I/O or may still have enough capacity, but it's starting to be starved of CPU front end, or it's being starved of resource. And as we add more and more users, it just cannot cope. We then need to look at things like RAID penalties and what's the best design around RAID for VDI. So a lot of the time we've seen people put in RAID 5 because it's what they've done for a long time. Whereas when we start to look at for every IOPS that's coming from a desktop, that turns into 4 IOPS in the backend storage. So now we start to adjust the configuration of the storage and look at things like RAID 10. But the alternative to that is put in something that's going to take away a lot of that I/O from that backend platform and leave that alone and use that piece of software, Atlantis Video, to optimize that storage. Now, there still will be instances where we want to change that backend and optimize it further, and we'll come on to why you want to do that later. But some of the things that we have to understand is what is the read-write ratio in your environment? What is the capacity requirement? Some people have 40 gig desktops, some people have 60 gig desktops. I've had a customer who actually wants 250 gigabyte desktops. And how you deliver those has to be given consideration versus the small percentage of very large desktops alongside a lot smaller desktops, and how that evolves into a complete solution. So VDI, in summary, has to be handled intelligently. Otherwise, we are going to cripple the performance to a point where the project fails, or the costs go up, or users just aren't happy with it. So you have to consider this carefully. As I said before, looking at a traditional PC was delivering me 50 to 75 files. The MacBook Air in front of me today is capable of delivering between 3,000 and 5,000 IOPS. So now the question is, what does my virtual desktop need to deliver? And it comes down to how you size I/O and understand what your environment is doing today. So if you're going to ask a user, they'll always say, you only need 5,000 IOPS and only 8 gig RAM and 4 CPUs. Now, what they don't know is they probably don't need all of that. What they have today is perfectly acceptable, and as we optimize the I/O underneath it, they'll get better and better performance from the memory and CPU because we're not burning that resource on dealing with storage. So the answer is always with VDI, it depends. But you want to be looking at their real requirements and sizing storage based on those real requirements. And if I take you through, how much is enough I/O, then we start to look at, this was a Performance graph that was running as we launched a whole selection of different desktop type applications. And you can see that there's some rather bizarre results. One is something like, say, Visio actually had a peak demand of 2,300 IOPS. But at the end of here, you can see that Windows 7 was sat idle, and yet there was still a sudden demand for 2,000 IOPS. And it might have been a fraction of a second, but it was still there. So we need to provide that I/O at that level it needs, or we'll end up slowing the desktop down. There is a fine line between peak I/O and average I/O, and it's working out where between those two lines we can sit to define how much I/O is enough. But in this test, we ran this test for 10 minutes. We launched these applications over. And the average here for me was 440 IOPS. Now, yes, it's not representative of a real user working like this all day, but it gives you pretty good insight into what you're having to design in your storage subsystem to be able to deliver what my applications need. And it's about that averaging out over a number of users that allows us to lower that average slightly from the 400 that we see here down to whatever we need, the 50 to the 100 IOPS that we're starting to see on average. So the other thing about sizing and capability is looking at flexibility. So traditional persistent VDI is typically going on to expensive tier 1 SAN. It's looking at a lot of fiber channel infrastructure to support that, and it's not very flexible. If I want to add to that, I've got to buy a lot of disk or put a complete new chassis in to be able to support more desktops. And that more desktops may be 10, 20, 50, so it's not going to make best use of that storage that we're having to put in. So then we start to see people pull back on the requirement for the VDI just to be able to fit it into a consistent or existing storage platform. When we start to look at ILIO as a software solution, we can actually come in and leverage a number of different storage technologies, anything from the existing SAN through to RAM, local flash, and deliver that blend of performance versus durability that we require from a persistent desktop. So if we want to, we can run it all in memory and deliver everything from RAM and replicate data back down to storage, and we'll talk about how that works in a bit, through to leveraging something like memory, finding memory's new flash cards, and being able to use local storage inside a box as our data store or even as our memory, and then persist that back shared storage. Maybe using something like a violin array on top of that to put an end-to-end solution in place, through to optimizing existing SAN and extending the capability around that SAN by adding more users or adding more performance. So we can see anywhere on an existing storage platform, we could see anywhere between up to 5 times more users, or dramatically taking the performance from whatever it's inside has today, 20 to 30 IOPS, up to 200 to 300 IOPS. And it's then down to the customer requirements to blend that between increased number of users versus increased performance. So another challenge that we see when we're talking about capacity and rollout is deployment time. Traditionally, persistent VDI tends to be better than stateless. So projects anywhere from 6 months to a year, or years even, to complete. And I think, to be fair, over the last 4 or 5 years, that time frame has shortened, but it's still significant investment to take an existing virtual desktop state and roll it into a virtual desktop environment. If you can take that and reduce the risk out of it and speed up deployment through some of the automation tools that we have, such as video deployment services, then we can actually see VDI projects going live much, much quicker. And we actually had a UK customer who took their existing VDI state, migrated onto Ilio, moved all 1,400 desktops inside 2 weeks, I think it was. So some of those speed of deployment that's also key. It's no good having a VDI project that's rolling on for months and months and months, because again, users will just lose interest. Or the kit that you purchased on day one, by the time you roll a majority of your users onto it, it's already a year old, and so you're not really seeing the true benefit that you would have got from that on day one. But at the same time, if we look at trying to take an existing physical environment all the way through to a stateless desktop, that's an even bigger challenge. And for a lot of people, it's an engineering exercise that's one step too far. And so persistent VDI is a very good stepping stone to get you into all of the benefits that VDI can offer you, and then review it and look at, is the stateless desktop right for me? And if it is, then what's my strategy for getting there? How do I virtualize my users? How do I virtualize my applications? How do I deliver that? But the key thing is you've already got Atlantis Ilio in there, and you can continue to leverage that as you move from a persistent desktop through to stateless desktop. That's another key thing when we look at deployment and how we can deploy it. So deployment services from us is an automated installation part of Ilio Center, deploys Ilios across hundreds of servers. So literally, you can put all the information into the tool, and it'll go away and build everything from scratch. It'll build Ilio, configure it, give it the storage it needs, all the way through to mounting the data store on the backend hypervisor. And so we get to the point where we can seamlessly hand over to the existing build system, whether that's Citrix, VMware, some homegrown build system that then provisions virtual machines. And it's integrated into Ilio Center, so it gives us a single point of deployment and management. So that's key. We see a lot of large enterprise deals or enterprise customers starting to look at how we integrate this into their existing build systems and enable them to deploy virtual desktop projects much, much quicker. So we start to look at planning for the future and architecting the vision. And this comes down to a lot more of the technical architecture. If we look at, here's an example where somebody started to size the storage for a particular use case and found out that it started to fail. So as we go on the left-hand graph, as we go left to right on here, you can see significant peak as they start to add more and more users against the same server and storage. So the performance is dropping off. And to give you an idea, once we get past this second line here, then performance is really starting to degrade for the end user. So once we put Ilio into this same stack, you can see that we get a very consistent, very flat user experience. And actually, there's no sign of the performance degrading yet. So we can continue to add users into this platform until we start to see that same thing. But it'll be 5 times longer than we would have seen previously. And in fact, we'd already hit issues with the test that we run on this storage platform. So this is where we break away from a bit of a theme of just about persistent, but we'll look at architecting the vision. So traditional PCs have been around for more than 20 years, right? But they have, the good thing about them is they have very standardized processes. There's one team in control of those, and users are locked in, right? You put that PC on their desk, and it's their PC. You have complete control over it. And really, a lot of the move to VDI is relinquishing some of that perceived control from the end user, but still maintaining it inside the data center. So actually I'm not losing anything in terms of security, data loss, and if anything I'm increasing it quite dramatically. But from an end user point of view, they feel they have more control over their own device. They're actually happier as end users. So persistent VDI is definitely the easiest first step into VDI. I can take my traditional PC, even P2V it, so you take it from physical and virtualize it, and put it in my data center, and just get the benefits of virtualization straight up. By putting Atlantis ILIO underneath that means I'm able to deliver the performance that's required of that from the storage at a reasonable cost. But I could do that without changing any, or many, if any, of the processes. But it does involve a broader team, so I have to go and work together with the storage team, the server team, the network teams to be able to deliver the platform. Once I've done that, I can then take that virtualized environment and spend some time, maybe with consultants, looking at how I take that and transition to a stateless environment over time. But all I'm really going to do in that, when I do that, is make better use of my resources and further optimize how I'm using storage and what I'm doing with it. So when we start looking at the VDI project as a whole, we have to understand the complete stack. What am I going to deliver from client devices? Do I let people bring their own tablets, laptops to connect in? Through to the desktop virtualization software? Is it Vue? Is it Citrix? Is it something else? Which hypervisor am I using? Which physical servers am I going to use? And how do they extend? And then which storage am I going to use? What's going to form the backbone of my VDI? So we have to look at scaling out and up as required. And those two are separate but have to be given consideration at the start of a project. So do I have to go down the Lego building block, make my building blocks as small as possible, so individual server point of view? Or do we go to something slightly bigger, like a blade chassis, and that becomes my building block? But we still need to be careful. Even when we go down a building block approach, we have to make sure that it fits in with everything else. So here we've got a circular building, which makes it very difficult to stack these together going forward. But at the same time, I have to contrast that with starting with a monolithic architecture, and being 3 years down the line and still building it, and not moving any users, but burning cash on it very, very quickly. And it's really a blend between this. So I want to look at what my, in this analogy, my final building looks like, but I want to build it in such a way that I can move in and start utilizing it as soon as the ground floor is ready, for example. And then we'll build the second and third floor. So how can I do that in such a way? So small building blocks are great when I first start. They allow me to grow on demand. So it could be 100 users or it could be 1,000 users to start adding as you need them. It allows me a way of guaranteeing the same level of performance for all users. So my building block may well be a single server with an Atlantis ILIO appliance on there with 70 to 80 virtual machines running in that contained environment with the suitable amount of CPU and memory inside that server or blade. And because now ILIO is sat on each server, the virtual machine sat on each server, I can guarantee that performance for that blade. And so as I build out and add more servers to the environment, I'm delivering that I/O from that virtual machine across the board. So whether I have 1 server or 10 servers, those 70 users on my individual blades are getting exactly the same performance across the board. I want to extract as many components from each other as possible. So I want to put together a layer that is VDI. I want to put a layer that is management or broker, and then I want to put a layer that's right at the top, which may be something like a web interface or Horizon server, the bit that allows the user to log in. But that will probably scale far better than the individual blades that's delivering VDI. So it's that structured, layered approach that will allow me to scale and fit components at the relevant level. I need to review it consistently, though, because if I'm building something, I have to be able to adapt. Business needs change, user needs change, and I need to be able to adapt to that. I can't stick rigorously to an architecture if it's not going to meet my business needs in 2 months' time. So I need to review where I am in delivering it and what requirements are coming along and adapt as I go. So I need a building block approach that allows me to do that. And I've even seen, adapt to the speed. So once people start to see the benefits of having a virtual desktop, you can log in from home, you can work from anywhere, secure data, being able to deliver virtual desktops globally with little risk to data sat inside them, then users can pull that. And so we've seen VDI projects that start to dramatically accelerate because the performance is delivered. And so IT needs to react to that and deliver that capability to the end user. And that means having to speed up my rollout, and that may have an impact on how I architect or what I do. That may increase the size of my building blocks because now I have more users to design for. So some of the areas that we need to carefully consider. Don't overlook the golden image. So even if we're doing a persistent VDI environment, it will typically have a template that we start from. So look at optimizing it in the best way for your environment. Don't just apply registry changes blindly because Citrix or VMware or Microsoft tell you to. Make sure you back up the golden images. We don't want to lose them. They form a key part of the build system and being able to roll out VDI faster. Make sure that we are not just looking at storage, but also looking at the CPU and memory that you require to be able to deliver that VDI project. End users probably always need better performance than you think, and they'll always tell you that they need better performance than they've actually got. So it's always a fight between the resource that you're providing and what they actually need to do their jobs. 15 to 21 apps isn't enough. Don't undersize storage. It will quickly become the most negative, cost-impacting experience of your VDI deployment if you do. And it's the one thing that will guarantee you to affect end-user experience. And there's not a lot I can do about it once I start to hit those bottlenecks. Don't squash the network. So things like PCs.During or HDX in Citrix, or PCs.During is UDP based. So think about quasing it. Think about quasing ICA on a from Citrix on the network. Make sure that we're doing everything that we can to protect the end user experience. Things like file copy can probably suffer at the expense of guaranteeing some performance from our users and the end user experience that they get. Okay, and it's key that we deliver a VDI that's better than physical. So, users want to install their own apps and customize it. So let them do that within the confines of your regulations and requirements within the enterprise. Enable search. As we start to put ILIO underneath the virtual desktop, then we can turn all that functionality back on that traditionally gets turned off. Windows search is probably one of the biggest features that Windows 7 delivered, and yet half the customers I get to see now are turning it off. Deliver the performance they want. So put ILIO under each desktop, and they'll get 200 to 300 IOPS a desktop. Look at what the application state is looking like. So, multimedia users, people using something like Link from Microsoft, will need 2 vCPUs. So understand what that does to your density and scalability, and cost that into the VDI cost of the business. Antivirus, well, you can turn it back on. You don't have to compromise the security because you don't have the I/O to be able to deliver an AV solution. Now you can put whatever antivirus solution you got back in and run it as you do in your physical environment today, because actually a lot of the I/O will be offloaded by ILIO. Validate and test, but don't spend too long doing it. So ensure that you can get to the point where you can scale to an agreed number and then start delivering that out to your users. Because it's only when your users really start to use the system and you get a production pilot in place will you understand exactly how the overall solution is going to profile and run. So why is Atlantis ILIO unique? It's capable of delivering the lowest cost per desktop from software, so faster than a PC. And we're seeing some of the fastest desktops out there in the industry, and I'll show you a demo in a minute. It's the only solution for VDI, and then up with no storage. So when we start looking at the in-memory solutions, then we deliver extremely performant desktops without any additional storage. We can start to see 4 to 10 times more users on any storage or SSD or flash array. So when we start to look at something like a violin memory array, then we can actually start to get a lot more desktops because we are dramatically reducing the amount of capacity that each desktop needs to be able to fit onto that array. Reduce project risk and human errors. As we start to automate more and more of the deployment of our software, we start to see that risk side reduce as well. And remove human errors just by automating that build system. migrate from persistent to stateless with no infrastructure changes. In fact, we'll probably give you infrastructure back as you do it because we'll get better resource usage out of it. We'll start to reduce even further the amount of storage that you need to deliver that. So another tie to putting a persistent desktop first and then migrating to stateless later. And it's just software. So agnostic across brokers, across hypervisors. We can deploy Ilio and optimize just about any type of virtual desktop out there today. So brief look at a customer case study, and being a European webinar, we looked at something across both geos. So US Army actually has a massive global deployment of capability worldwide. So one of the more recent ones for us was MEDCOM, and this was 8,800 doctors and nurses running very graphically intensive applications across 7 hospitals. Really having key requirements around ability to visualize data, clinical applications, running things like X-rays, being able to virtualize those across hospitals so that they can discuss in real time with colleagues, being able to access a virtual desktop and share screens and all that stuff. They had a massive storage bottleneck with their initial rollout of this project. And the key for putting Ilio underneath their platform was purely driving performance, and they were quite happy to pay for that performance in delivering a far better end-user experience, because it was key to getting better diagnostics. It was key to giving the end users the type of VDI that they needed. And so it's a joint solution, Citrix FlexPath, Zen Desktop, both in there, Ilio underneath everything, in combination with HP and a partner, WWT, to actually deliver the end-to-end solution. And so this was actually HP Blade servers with NetApp storage. When we came out of it, we actually reduced the amount of storage by 85% and saw significantly faster response times. So we managed to repurpose that storage for future rollouts and other uses within their deployment. Okay, so I can see a few questions coming up. I'm just going to do a quick demo, and then we'll cover all the questions actually in one go, because I've been talking for a long time. So let me just drop out of this PowerPoint presentation. I'm actually going to take you through a quick demo of a persistent VDI, and it's actually my desktop that I use all the time. So, some of the numbers you see here, maybe I can't talk and type, sorry. Maybe this is realistic of a in production desktop. I actually run it, I think mine's running alongside about 30 other developers over here in headquarters. So this is where we see demo goals kicking. Okay, so just let this launch. So this is running, Zen Desktop 7.1, Windows 7, Office 2013, and you can see in here that I had some stuff running already actually. So we can leave that running. Just looks like any other desktop, right? So in terms of end user experience, what does the desktop in memory running give me? Well, I can actually run a little script here that gives me all of the Office applications. And you can see here that I've started them all within 10, 15 seconds. And they boot incredibly quickly. I've opened up the whole of the Office suite. I can switch between these pretty much instantly. We get application response time almost immediately. If I do this on a traditional PC, loading all of this would have taken me 2 to 3 minutes. So almost instantly you can see key end user experience. And we can put some metrics behind this as well. So if I just minimize all of this, I can actually run a performance test. And what this is going to do is benchmark me against a number of other disks in the database. So I'm going to run the disk one, that's the one I'm interested in. But to give you an idea, this desktop's got 2 gig of RAM, single CPU, and it's sat alongside about 60 other desktops. And I'm hoping that everybody else is working. So it'll give you an idea that this is in use. So this is real world numbers. And I can show you some other metrics around this in a minute. If we go here and go tests, go desktop, and we'll do all of the disk tests. So while that runs, we can just open up Perf one and show you what it's doing in the background. And it's really just driving different I/O profiles to my back-end disk. So here's Perf one. So you can see at the moment I'm driving an average of 21,500 IOPS and a maximum of about 25,000 IOPS. Now, in terms of sizing, typically an IDEO plant is capable of delivering somewhere between 25 and 35,000 IOPS. And that gets shared across all my desktops. So the number that I see here may be being impacted by somebody else doing a compile. But the key thing is, for me as an end user, I'm actually getting incredibly good experience. And so my 2 gig of RAM and virtual CPU is more than enough for me to do what I do on a daily basis, from your PowerShell scripts here or there through to presentations, through to content creation. So if we let this finish, you see at the moment the maximum that we drove was 25 and a bit thousand IOPS, averaging 9,000 IOPS for my desktop. So I'm making other people ask for I/O at the same time. So this all, well, the CD test is pretty irrelevant, but we'll let it finish. And what you'll see come out of this is a benchmark, and we've seen anything from sort of what else mentioned. We don't need it. So if we just find the pass mark score again here, so you can see that I've got a score almost in excess, or just under 4,000. But to put that into context, an Intel SSD delivers me 3,400. But the key thing about this is it's shared. So if I go and show you Virtual Center, for example, I'm actually sharing this with all of these other people. And you can see that most of them are in use, and we can open up more and more and more. So there's about 90 desktops spread across, or more than 120 desktops spread across 2 hosts at the moment. So that's really it from a end user experience demo piece. So we just drop out of my desktop. And go. Okay, so briefly cover today, developing a business case, understanding user requirements and why that's key. And then really the rest of it around size, capacity, performance, being able to look at storage requirements up front, and then ensure that you're looking at the future vision for your VDI deployment and planning for that. So I guess there's a few Q&A that I've seen pop past the screen.
Are there a minimum number of virtual desktops that you require to realize the cost benefits of storage optimization?
Good question. So no, in short. And really because we are a software virtual clients, we can deploy onto any server. So whether you've got a VDI deployment of 20 users or 5,500 users, we can give you savings on both ends of those scales. So one of the unique things about being software is our ability to affect at any scale a VDI deployment.
With typical persistent desktop deployments, where is the user data typically stored? Is it inside the image or on external mount points? If inside the image, how does this impact the desktop density per server?
So a lot of the time, probably 85–90% of the time, we'll still see people put personal data onto some sort of centralized filer or NFS or NAS or CIF share. And really that's around, it's more to do with the fact that people don't generally back up desktops. And even when we see, or even when I see them move into a virtual environment, it's still too expensive or too complicated to start backing up desktops. So most storage will sit inside or external to that virtual desktop. That's not a requirement. I do have customers out there who are running enclosed or persistent desktops with all of the user data in there. It does have an effect on sizing to a certain extent. And when we start to look at the amount of memory required, it may slightly increase that on an individual desktop basis. But it has to be tempered against the fact that it's very unlikely that that's going to be unique. So one of the core benefits of video is our ability to deduplicate data. And chances are one user will have very similar data to another. So there's a bit of background in there. It does depends on what that data looks like and what those user-centric data is made up of. But it shouldn't have a dramatic, it's not like an order of magnitude different. It's just that it has to be sized as part of a production pilot.
What is the overhead of running Atlantis Ilio on a server?
So it varies. If we are optimizing storage, it'll range from 22 gigs of RAM and a couple of vCPUs to be able to offload storage. And that's enough to give you an idea to run about 60 virtual machines and provide incredible performance. As we start to go into all-in memory, then obviously the overhead is slightly higher, but it may be 80 to 100 gigs of RAM and a couple of vCPUs to be able to deliver 60 to 80 persistent virtual desktops sized very well.
How does Atlantis avoid data loss when having RAM issues?
So if we look at, in fact, in both a stateless desktop or a persistent in-memory desktop have the same requirements of obviously RAM is volatile. So whether it's issues aside, you still have to protect for general maintenance and reboots. So in our persistent model, we actually replicate memory back to shared storage. And that's an outbound process. So the fact that we're writing that data back down to disk doesn't have any impact on performance, but we're able to protect and copy, if you like, that data down to disk to provide resilience. And that just gets replayed back into memory on a reboot or a server outage, so we can fully recover back to the exact point at which it failed. In a stateless environment, we actually take a copy of memory at a point in time, and then again replay that back should that server come back or recover from failure. And here's just a few final points to take away and think about. Ilio has been proven at scale. I think the largest deployment that we have at the moment is just under 100,000 seats in production. We've saved customers millions in CAPEX and OPEX costs. So that's 75% of CAPEX saving is really achievable. We've seen multiple awards throughout the last couple of years, 2012, 2013, at some of the biggest virtualization shows in the world. With Ilio being recognized at both Citrix and VMworld. And the team here is made up of virtualization experts. So everybody that we have in the technical team has experience of delivering VDI or virtualization projects around VMware and Citrix. So I think that's it from me. So I think if
there's any additional questions, you can please feel free to send those inquiries to sales@atlantiscomputing.com.